human survival depends on us falling in love. It depends on me falling in love with my mother and my mother falling in love with me. And if that doesn't happen, we're pretty much doomed.
What makes a mother's love so incomparable? What makes it special? When I watched Boyhood in 2014, I was 23, and this idea was the furthest thing from my mind. I liked the movie, but it wasn't necessarily that impactful. For a movie about life and childhood, it didn't really have anything profound to say, and I didn't really understand why older people like my mother and her friends were so impacted. At 23, I just felt the nostalgia, having grown up in Central Texas and being close in age to Mason Jr. It was an obvious choice to focus on him as the emotional center of the film. Mason is basically a happy and normal kid. He has all of the familiar interests of a boy growing up in Texas, and what you see early on is just what you'd expect to see. A boy learning and growing, and just trying to have as much fun as he can. As a single mother, Olivia's whole life is devoted to raising Mason and his sister Samantha. Even though she's a great mother, Mason's life is filled with instability. It takes all of her time and energy just for them to survive, and they have to move around so that Olivia can take steps to improve their life trajectory, to look for more. She always feels like they deserve more. It's not necessarily an easy life for the family. In addition to instability, dysfunction enters their lives with Olivia's second husband.
What's the matter? You feeling left out?
During my first watch through, this was probably the most gripping aspect of the film, because I had moments like this in my own childhood. I can say that the worst part of it isn't these explosive moments, but rather the tense moments right before and right after, just waiting for it to happen again. Powerless. I've always appreciated the patient accuracy of this film, with children disappearing into one electronic world or another as the world around them is coming apart.
You need to relax.
I got my money!
But why do you need your money so fast? Come on.
Has he ever gotten this bad before?
Scare me.
They're just numb, unable to process all of it sometimes. Or moments like this.
I'm wearing dirty clothes because you wouldn't even let us get our stuff. We don't even have a place to live. This sucks.
Samantha, I'm doing the best I can.
When you're that young and confused, and you feel like your world is coming apart, sometimes you're looking to your mom just to make things better. And she does. Life goes on. The kids, particularly Mason, adapt super well to everything. There's this continual return to stability from all of the chaos that creeps into their lives, and they have no real issue navigating through their teenage years. There's more of these small and familiar formative moments, like a first kiss, partying, minor bullying. Some of these count as difficulties, but for most children, like Mason and Samantha, these are just minor distractions in the grand scheme of things. We ultimately see them grow into well-adjusted, good-natured, and complete adults. Overall, just a very quintessential story of youth. Tough in some ways, but ultimately, a very successful story. So what's the big deal? At 23, I appreciated how accurate these mundane moments were, how they shed some light on the nitty-gritty and the rough edges of a real family life. I've always given it credit for that. But there's nothing special about that. That's just life. I realize now that at 23 I was still sort of relating to all of these moments in the film like I had as a child, from Mason's perspective. When you're a kid, the world that you manage is actually really small in reality, even if it feels huge at the time. I think when I rewatch it all now, I'm able to put myself more into Olivia's shoes throughout the entire journey. I've really had to build my own life and earn my own keep. I've taken in a long-term dependence since then. So I guess what I realized more than anything is how painstakingly hard life is when you have to be fully responsible for your own life, and potentially more than that, It's nowhere close to the level of someone like Olivia or my own mother, but just enough to appreciate them and to appreciate the difference. Olivia is featured heavily in the first 40% of the movie, but once we get into those teenage years, she's very much in the background, as Mason starts figuring things out on his own. But when I watch all of these portions now, all I can think about is how all of it is made possible by Olivia's hard work. She spent the first part of the movie pouring into her children, nurturing and protecting them, allowing them to even get to this point at all. And now she's stepping back, but she's still providing for all of these small moments in the process. She's supporting Mason and Samantha, giving them room to grow and to be their own people, empowering them. Just think about that second husband that we saw earlier. If he's anything like my dad, and I think that he is, then he's not just this hard ass who wants to make his kids better. That's what he portrays himself as, but he doesn't love them for them. He doesn't love his kids more than he loves himself, and he doesn't even love himself much to begin with. Just imagine how stunted his kids are turning out versus Mason and Samantha. It makes you appreciate Olivia's emotional intelligence. Something I'm more painfully aware of now is the concept of true burnout. How adult life is 100% work, and burnout is a fixture of that. For me at least, after a certain point, you just drain to zero emotionally, and you may not be able to empathize to a healthy degree. And it's something that we see in Olivia's third husband, Jim. You can still keep going through the motions and do all of the things that you need to do, and you can take that really far actually. But the more you push forward, the less connected you feel to everything and all that you're working so hard for. Eventually, you may break down under the weight of your own frustration.
You know, Jim, you're not my dad.
No, I'm not your dad. You know how I know that? Because I'm actually here. I'm the guy with the job, paying the bills, taking care of you, your mom, your sister, huh? Huh? I'm that guy.
From my experience, you can't really refill that energy unless someone gives back to you. But that's not what I see when I look at Olivia, when I look at my own mother. They both have zero external support. They are the support. But they always seem to have more to give emotionally whenever the need arises, no matter how exhausted they are. The older I get, the more I understand the full extent of this ability, and the more impressed I am, and the more I don't get how it's humanly possible. It's not just the enormous workload. It's not just the fact that her family takes up all of her time and energy and all of her money. It's not even just that unending love. When I watch this movie now, I think the best way to appreciate what Olivia is giving up for her family is when we look at the biological father, Mason Sr. From the very beginning, he's likable. He's definitely a really nice guy, never loses his temper, and he's really cool. He has a cool car, he has a lot of musical talent and interesting hobbies. He's not a Republican like every other guy in Texas. He's the type of dad that you might brag about at school when you're like 6. I really do like Mason Sr. He's a good person. And unlike the other men in Olivia's life, I think it's clear that he really does care. However, I still don't think he's always cared the way that Olivia does. The way he needed to.
I was 23 when your mom had you, all right? So was she, all right? And we didn't put ourselves in the best position to be great parents. And I wish I were a better parent to you guys, all right? And I hope that you can learn from my mistakes, okay? So wear a condom, okay? Or get it. I don't know, whatever.
When he gives his children life advice, and it's good advice, he's doing it through the context of reflecting on his own life experiences and his own mistakes. Like he's only truly just a few steps ahead of his kids at any point. When he gives gifts or he promises gifts, it's always things that he himself likes, that he hopes that his kids will love as well. How he relates to his children is through his own life, and that's not really enough. He takes about a decade after his divorce to slowly find himself, but he doesn't actually do all that much with his time. I think all it really amounts to for him is to get over himself and realize that life should be about more than himself. and finding answers for himself. I think it takes him all of this time just to get to the point that Olivia started from. And he has that luxury because Olivia is doing all of the work. She never has the same opportunity to develop her own adult life, but she never really needed it. What we see from her is what we've come to expect from great mothers, that they instinctively are everything to their children. She already is everything that they need, and always has been. I think if you had a great mother, and I really hope that you did, then she always felt like a constant to you, never needed to become the mother that you needed. Her love was just always there from day one, to the point where it's too easy to take for granted. As Mason Sr. catches up, he has some quality moments that feature prominently in the film. But when I watch this movie again, it's obvious to me that it's not these big moments that really matter, but all of the other moments that add up in the end.
You did a great job with both of them, by the way.
Thanks for saying that. I never thought I'd hear you say that.
Well, it's true. Thank you.
By the time he figures it out, the type of self-sacrifice that's really needed, it's kind of too late. After a certain point, your kids don't really need you anymore, because they got everything that they actually needed from their mother. Olivia starts the movie in an apartment with her children. She's ending it in an apartment without her children. And if you didn't know any better, it sort of looks like she doesn't have that much to show for it all.
Did you put this in here again? I don't want it.
Come on, it's the first picture you ever took.
Well, I mean, all the more reason to leave it behind, right?
Nothing just for herself. I don't think I really appreciated this scene when I was 23.
This is the worst day of my life.
But now I better understand the extent of the self-sacrifice that Olivia has made. It's her entire life. All of her best years. And she can't just pick up where she left off 20 years ago and learn to be her own person again.
I was someone's daughter, then I was somebody's fucking mother!
When you're a mother, if you're keeping anything for yourself, that's something that you aren't providing to your children. And for a great mother like Olivia, what that means is that you aren't keeping anything at all. I think she literally hasn't been able to process her own feelings through the 20 years of enormous and unending difficulties that she's carried her family through. Literally hasn't had the breathing room to do anything but just deal with it all and bury her feelings indefinitely. Her life and past, I think, kind of sneaks back up on her all at once. I think it's telling that she's a psychology professor, and yet she still gets caught up in the moment, into all of the moments, and she can't really keep her finger on the pulse. I think that's super common. It's more than just a painstaking past, however. That past is baked into her identity now. Through all of the external instability in her family's life, she's been that oddly dynamic stability, bringing everything back together for her family. That constant. The only constant in her own life has been to be a mother, giving up everything to do that. So giving is all that she knows now. The men in her life have either been unhelpful or even detrimental, and everyone else in her life relies on her, so she's just taken for granted. Olivia doesn't have anyone to watch her back, no one that she can rely on. So now she has to sort through all of this alone. When Mason walks out of that door to go off to college, a big part of her is walking out with him.
You know what's next? Huh? It's my fucking funeral! Just go and leave my picture!
What makes a mother's love so special? I think if we look at the extent of self-sacrifice, what we see is how a good mother literally loves you more than you're able to love yourself, more than she's able to love herself. I think that at 23, I still saw this movie as this compilation of childhood memories. To me, they were just a bunch of random cuts of life. Just life. But now, I don't think the movie is about Boyhood at all. And I think I understand why it feels completely different to a parent. They filmed this movie across 12 years, and they succeeded in making this feel like a real family. Not a movie family, but a real family, with enough continuity that the viewer just instinctively fills in the gaps with their own deeply personal experiences. I think that when you're older, your perspective allows you to flesh out these gaps more fully, because you have some better appreciation for the work that goes into it all, how it's all connected, how it all means something. I think that when you're a boy, or even a young man, you can't properly grasp the value of all of these seemingly mundane moments, because you're not looking at everything around them. I think that's why my mom loved this movie more than I did. I think that you can't truly appreciate the value of your own life, the way that someone like her can. These moments may not mean that much to you while they're happening, but they mean the whole world to her. Happy Mother's Day.